In a small diner on the outskirts of a bustling city, life moved at its own gentle pace. The aroma of fresh coffee and homemade pie filled the air as regulars found comfort in their usual spots. Among the staff was a quiet waitress in her mid-30s, known simply as May to the regulars. Her movements were precise and deliberate, her voice soft but confident as she went about her duties with an almost military-like efficiency. May had worked at the diner for just over a year, keeping to herself and rarely sharing details about her past. What customers didn't know was that beneath her modest uniform and gentle demeanor lay 15 years of distinguished military service, including 8 years as one of the Marine Corps' most accomplished snipers. She'd chosen this simple life after retirement, finding peace in the routine of civilian work. The incident began on a rainy Tuesday evening when 3 men walked into the diner, tracking mud across the freshly mopped floor. Their expensive clothes and flashy jewelry stood in stark contrast to the humble establishment's regular clientele. The leader of the group, a tall man with a designer watch, immediately began making demands, snapping his fingers to get May's attention. May approached their table with her usual calm demeanor, notepad ready. The men started with small provocations, complaining about water spots on their glasses, sending back perfectly good food, and making inappropriate comments. Other customers began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, but May handled each situation with remarkable patience. "Sugar, you might want to learn how to do your job properly," the ringleader sneered, deliberately knocking his coffee cup off the table. The hot liquid splashed across the floor, nearly hitting an elderly couple at the next table. May's expression remained neutral as she cleaned up the mess, but those who looked closely might have noticed her carefully controlled breathing, a technique she'd learned long ago to maintain composure under pressure. The harassment escalated when one of the men grabbed May's wrist as she set down their replacement drinks. What happened next was so subtle that most customers missed it entirely. Without breaking her professional smile, May executed a precise pressure point technique that made the man release her instantly, leaving him confused about why his fingers had suddenly gone numb. "Is there a problem with your hand, sir?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying an undertone that made the man's companions sit up straighter. For the first time, they noticed something in her bearing that gave them pause: the way she positioned herself, her awareness of every exit, how she kept her hands relaxed but ready. The ringleader, however, wasn't perceptive enough to read the warning signs. He stood up, using his height to try to intimidate her. "Maybe we need to teach you some respect," he growled, reaching into his jacket pocket. Before his hand could emerge, May had already assessed 14 different ways to neutralize the situation without endangering the other customers. "Sir," she said, her voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of a Marine Corps veteran, "I've spent 8 years teaching respect from 2 kilometers away. I strongly suggest you reconsider your next action." Her eyes, previously warm and friendly, now held the steady gaze of someone who had made split-second decisions in life-or-death situations. The change in her demeanor was dramatic enough to penetrate even their clouded judgment. The ringleader's hand slowly withdrew from his pocket as recognition dawned in his eyes. Behind him, his companions had already begun to edge toward the door, their instincts finally kicking in. The diner had gone completely silent. May stood perfectly still, her posture relaxed but alert, every movement economical and purposeful, just as she'd been trained. The 3 men, their earlier bravado evaporating, hurriedly threw some cash on the table and made their exit, trying to maintain what little dignity they had left. After they left, May calmly cleaned their table and resumed her duties as if nothing had happened. The regular customers, who had witnessed the entire scene, sat in amazed silence. The elderly couple she had protected from the spilled coffee insisted on leaving her an extra-large tip, which she tried to decline with characteristic modesty. Word of the incident spread quickly through the small community, though May never discussed it. When asked, she would simply smile and say, "Everyone deserves to enjoy their meal in peace." The diner's regular customers, however, noticed that the mutual respect between them and their quiet waitress had deepened into something more, an understanding that sometimes the most unassuming people carry the most remarkable stories. The three men never returned to the diner, but their brief encounter served as a powerful reminder that courage and strength often come in unexpected packages. May continued her work with the same gentle efficiency, finding satisfaction in this simple life she'd chosen. Yet now and then, particularly observant customers might notice her scanning the diner with the practiced eye of someone who had spent years watching over others, still quietly standing guard over her little corner of the world. The following week brought unexpected changes to the quiet diner. News of May's encounter with the troublemakers had spread through the small community, drawing curious new customers who hoped to catch a glimpse of the waitress with the mysterious military background. May handled the attention with characteristic grace, deflecting questions with gentle humor and keeping the focus on her work. Among the new faces was a retired police officer who introduced himself as Pete, a gray-haired gentleman with kind eyes and a limp from an old service injury. He became a regular during the morning shift, nursing his coffee while observing May's precise movements with professional appreciation. One morning, he finally worked up the courage to share his own story of service, creating an unspoken bond of understanding between them. "Reminds me of my partner back in '92, Pete said quietly one day, watching May effortlessly manage the breakfast rush. "Same way of moving, always aware of everything around her. Saved my life more times than I can count." May responded with a slight nod, her eyes softening with recognition of a kindred spirit. The diner's owner, a practical woman in her 60s who everyone called Ms. Chen, had always known there was something special about May. During the hiring interview 18 months ago, she'd noticed the disciplined posture, the careful way May assessed the room, the subtle signs of someone who had seen more than most. Now, watching May handle the increased attention with unwavering professionalism, Ms. Chen felt a deeper appreciation for her quiet strength. One rainy afternoon, a young woman rushed into the diner, clearly distressed. Her hands shook as she clutched her phone, casting nervous glances over her shoulder. May recognized the signs immediately: hypervigilance, elevated breathing, the telltale markers of someone in fear. Without drawing attention, she guided the woman to a corner booth, positioning herself between the customer and the door. "You're safe here," May said softly, her voice carrying the calm assurance that had once steadied nervous recruits before their first mission. The woman, who introduced herself as Rose, gradually revealed that she was being followed by her ex-boyfriend, despite having a restraining order against him. May listened carefully while maintaining her routine, her trained eyes regularly scanning the diner's entrance. She noticed Pete, sitting at his usual spot, had also picked up on the situation. Their eyes met briefly, a silent communication passing between them. Pete casually relocated to a table near the door, his phone ready. When a man matching Rose's description entered the diner 20 minutes later, his agitated movement setting off immediate alarm bells, May was already in motion. She smoothly intercepted him before he could spot Rose, her presence somehow filling the space despite her modest height. "Sir, would you like to be seated?" May's question carried a weight that made the man pause. Her positioning, learned through years of close-quarters combat training, subtly blocked his view of the dining area while giving her full control of the situation. The man's aggressive stance triggered memories of countless similar confrontations in May's military career, but this time, she had civilians to protect. Her mind calculated angles, distances, and potential scenarios with practiced efficiency, all while maintaining a serene expression. "I know she's here," he growled, trying to step around May. Her slight adjustment to maintain the blocking position seemed almost casual, but Pete recognized it as a tactical move. The man, however, found himself increasingly frustrated by his inability to simply push past this unassuming waitress. "Sir," May's voice took on that same commanding tone from the previous incident, "I need to inform you that you're making our customers uncomfortable. I suggest you leave now." Her eyes, while maintaining their professional warmth, held an unmistakable warning that made the man hesitate. Pete had already quietly called the local police, who arrived within minutes to find May calmly serving coffee while keeping the agitated man engaged in conversation, expertly preventing any escalation. The responding officers, recognizing Pete, quickly took control of the situation. They escorted the man out, having been informed about the existing restraining order. After the police left with the ex-boyfriend in custody, Rose broke down in tears of relief. May sat with her during her break, sharing quiet words of encouragement and helping her connect with a local support group for domestic violence survivors. Ms. Chen watched from behind the counter, her heart swelling with pride for her remarkable employee. The incident added another layer to May's growing reputation in the community. Yet she remained the same humble waitress, declining recognition and continuing her work with unwavering dedication. Regular customers noticed that she had begun teaching subtle self-awareness techniques to the younger waitresses, showing them how to stand confidently and be more aware of their surroundings. Pete, who had witnessed the entire scene, later shared a knowing look with May. "You never really leave the service, do you?" he asked quietly. May responded with a small smile, refilling his coffee cup. "We just find new ways to serve," she replied, her words carrying the weight of shared experience. The diner itself seemed to change subtly after that day. It became more than just a place to eat, it transformed into a sanctuary of sorts, where people felt inexplicably safe and protected. Regular customers began bringing their troubled friends and family members, instinctively knowing that within these walls, under the watchful eye of their quiet waitress, they would find a moment of peace. Ms. Chen installed better lighting in the parking lot and security cameras at May's suggestion, though everyone knew the real security came from the vigilant presence of their former Marine waitress. The diner's atmosphere remained warm and welcoming, but there was now an underlying sense of security that made it special. As autumn descended on the small town, the diner became a warm haven against the growing chill. May's routine remained steady, but her quiet influence continued to ripple through the community in unexpected ways. The young women she had trained in situational awareness were standing taller, carrying themselves with newfound confidence that extended far beyond their work at the diner. One particularly stormy evening, a school bus broke down near the diner. The driver, concerned about the worsening weather, led 20 middle school students inside. May immediately sprang into action, her military experience in logistics and crisis management emerging naturally. She helped Ms. Chen reorganize the space, turning the diner into an impromptu shelter while they waited for replacement transportation. The children, initially scared and restless, found themselves drawn to May's calm presence. As she served hot chocolate and grilled cheese sandwiches, she shared subtle lessons wrapped in stories that captured their attention. Without mentioning her military background, she taught them about teamwork, resilience, and looking out for one another. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is help someone else feel strong," she told a shy girl who had been bullied at school. The child listened intently, recognizing something in May's gentle words that spoke to her own struggles. By the time the replacement bus arrived 2 hours later, the students had transformed from a frightened group into a unified team, each looking out for their classmates. The following week, May noticed something different about the diner's younger customers. Students began stopping by after school, not just for the food, but for the sense of security they felt there. They gravitated toward the counter where May worked, doing their homework while she moved efficiently between tables. Some of the older students even started helping out, bussing tables and learning the value of hard work. Pete, observing this transformation from his regular spot, shared his thoughts with May during a quiet moment. "You're building something here," he said, watching a group of teenagers respectfully help an elderly couple with their heavy bags. "It's not just a diner anymore." May's response was characteristically modest, but her eyes showed pride in the changes she witnessed. The diner's evolution caught the attention of a local community center director, who approached May about teaching a self-defense class for women. Initially hesitant to step back into any form of instruction, May declined. However, when Rose returned to the diner with other survivors from her support group, their stories of fear and helplessness stirred something in May's warrior spirit. After careful consideration, she agreed to teach one basic class, focusing on awareness and prevention rather than combat. The session would be held in the diner after hours, creating a familiar, non-threatening environment for the participants. Ms. Chen enthusiastically offered the space, understanding the importance of what May was trying to accomplish. The evening of the class arrived, and 15 women gathered in the cleared dining area. May began not with physical techniques, but with the mental aspects of personal safety. She shared the same situational awareness principles she'd taught the young waitresses, explaining how to read environments and trust their instincts. "Your mind is your strongest weapon," May explained, demonstrating how simple adjustments in posture could project confidence. "Most confrontations can be avoided before they begin if you know what to look for." The women absorbed every word, recognizing that they were learning from someone who truly understood their fears. As the class progressed, May noticed one participant hanging back, her body language speaking of deep trauma. After the session, the woman, introducing herself as Lynn, stayed behind. She was a nurse at the local hospital, working late shifts that often left her feeling vulnerable in the parking garage. May spent extra time with her, sharing specific strategies for her situation. The impact of the class extended far beyond that evening. The women formed a support network, meeting regularly at the diner to practice what they'd learned and share their experiences. May watched from a distance, satisfied to see them growing stronger together. Lynn, in particular, began walking with new confidence, eventually becoming a mentor to newer nurses at the hospital. Word of May's class spread through the hospital staff, leading to an unexpected connection. A trauma surgeon, recognizing the military precision in the techniques Lynn described, visited the diner to meet May. Their conversation revealed a shared understanding of high-pressure situations and the importance of staying calm under stress. The surgeon, Dr. Rivera, became another regular at the diner, often arriving after long shifts with stories of lives saved and lost. May listened with the same attention she gave all her customers, but there was a deeper understanding between them. They spoke the same language of service and sacrifice, though in different fields. One day, Dr. Rivera brought in a young veteran struggling with the transition to civilian life. The former soldier sat at the counter, his anxiety visible in his rigid posture and darting eyes. May recognized the signs immediately, she'd seen them in her own reflection years ago. Without drawing attention to his distress, she created a quiet space of understanding, letting him know through subtle gestures and calm presence that he wasn't alone. Over the following weeks, more veterans found their way to the diner, drawn by word of mouth about the waitress who understood their unspoken struggles. May never advertised her military background, but her fellow veterans recognized one of their own. The diner became a safe space for them to sit quietly or share stories, knowing they would be understood without judgment. Ms. Chen watched all of this with quiet pride, marveling at how her simple diner had transformed into something extraordinary. The place hummed with a special energy, not just from the regular breakfast rush or dinner crowds, but from the countless small moments of healing and connection that happened every day. Through it all, May remained the same humble waitress, serving coffee and pie with genuine care. But those who looked closely could see that she was also serving something far more valuable: hope, strength, and the reminder that everyone, no matter their past or present struggles, deserved to feel safe and respected. Winter arrived with unexpected severity, bringing with it new challenges for the diner and its growing community. Heavy snowfall had left many elderly residents isolated in their homes, and May couldn't help but notice the absence of several regular customers who usually visited daily. During a quiet moment between shifts, she approached Ms. Chen with a proposal. "We have everything we need right here," May explained, gesturing to the well-stocked kitchen. "And I know some people who can help with delivery." Ms. Chen didn't need convincing, she had already been worried about their elderly patrons. Within hours, they had organized an impromptu meal delivery service, with May coordinating the logistics as naturally as she had once organized military operations. The teenage volunteers who had become fixtures at the diner eagerly joined the effort. May paired each young person with a veteran from their regular customers, creating teams that would check on the elderly while delivering hot meals. She drew from her military experience, teaching them how to efficiently plan routes and maintain communication in adverse weather conditions. One delivery team, consisting of a 16-year-old volunteer named Joy and a veteran named Charlie, discovered an elderly man who had fallen and couldn't reach his phone. Their quick response and May's calm guidance over the phone helped prevent what could have been a tragedy. The incident reinforced the importance of their community network, and the delivery service became a permanent feature of the diner. As word spread about the diner's community initiatives, local businesses began reaching out to offer support. The grocery store provided discounted supplies, while the hardware store donated safety equipment for the delivery volunteers. May's quiet leadership had sparked a movement of community care that extended far beyond the diner's walls. Dr. Rivera, impressed by the efficiency of May's operation, began coordinating with the diner to ensure that recently discharged patients had access to proper meals. The partnership evolved naturally, with May's delivery teams becoming an unofficial support network for those recovering at home. Her military training in logistics proved invaluable as she balanced the growing demands while maintaining the diner's regular operations. One snowy evening, a group of corporate executives from the city found themselves stranded when their luxury car broke down near the diner. They entered with an air of superiority, clearly viewing the establishment as beneath their standards. May served them with her usual professionalism, even as they made dismissive comments about the quaint establishment. Their attitudes began to shift, however, as they witnessed the steady stream of delivery teams coming and going, the coordinated effort to serve both in-house customers and homebound community members. One executive, after overhearing May calmly direct resources to help an elderly couple whose heating had failed, asked about the operation. "It's just neighbors helping neighbors," May replied simply, refilling his coffee cup. The executive, who had overseen complex corporate operations, recognized the sophisticated logistics at play. He watched May seamlessly switch between managing deliveries, training new volunteers, and maintaining her regular duties, all while keeping the atmosphere calm and organized. The winter weather also brought unexpected reunions. A group of May's former Marine unit members, having heard about her community work through the veteran grapevine, made a special trip to the diner. They entered quietly, taking seats at different tables, ordering coffee and pie while observing their former sergeant in her new element. May recognized them immediately. Her situational awareness had never dulled, but maintained her professional demeanor. It wasn't until her break that she approached their tables, sharing quiet greetings and understated smiles. The respect in their eyes was evident. They saw how she had translated their military training into civilian service. "Still leading missions, Sarge," one of them commented softly, watching her coordinate another delivery team. May's response was characteristic: different battlefield, same principles. Take care of your people, and the mission takes care of itself. Her former unit members left generous tips and a deeper appreciation for how military skills could serve a community. The corporate executives, who had extended their stay due to the weather, witnessed this interaction with growing interest. They saw beyond the surface of the humble diner to recognize a model of community resilience and leadership. Before leaving, they approached Ms. Chen with an offer to support the diner's community programs. May was hesitant about accepting corporate support, concerned it might change the organic nature of their operation. But Ms. Chen helped her see how additional resources could expand their ability to serve the community. They worked together to establish a foundation that would support similar initiatives in other neighborhoods, with May providing guidance on the organizational structure. As winter deepened, the diner became more than just a haven from the cold. It was a command center for community care, a training ground for young leaders, and a model for how military precision could serve civilian needs. May's quiet influence had created something remarkable, though she would never take credit for it. The teenagers who had started as simple volunteers were developing leadership skills of their own. Joy, who had helped save the elderly man, began organizing her own delivery teams at her high school. The veterans found new purpose in mentoring these young people, sharing their experiences and wisdom in ways that helped them heal. Throughout all these changes, May maintained her role as a waitress, finding satisfaction in the simple acts of service that had drawn her to the job initially. She still served coffee with the same care and attention she had on her first day, believing that every small interaction was an opportunity to make someone's day better. The three thugs who had once threatened May might not recognize the diner if they returned now. What had been a simple restaurant had evolved into a community hub, where people from all walks of life came together to share meals, stories, and support. Their attempt at intimidation had inadvertently sparked a transformation that touched countless lives. As spring began to emerge, bringing with it new beginnings, the diner faced an unexpected challenge. A large restaurant chain announced plans to open a franchise just 2 blocks away. The news sent ripples of concern through the community, with many worried about how this would affect their beloved local establishment. May observed the situation with her characteristic calm, noting how Ms. Chen's shoulders tensed slightly whenever the topic came up. During a quiet morning before opening, May found Ms. Chen studying the monthly accounts with unusual intensity. The older woman looked up, meeting May's steady gaze. "My parents started this diner 40 years ago," Ms. Chen shared, her voice soft but determined. "They served their first meal with just 4 tables and a dream." May listened, understanding that sometimes the fiercest battles weren't fought with weapons but with determination and community spirit. The corporate restaurant's marketing campaign began aggressively, with flashy billboards and promotional offers flooding the neighborhood. Yet something unexpected happened. The diner's regular customers not only continued their patronage but began actively promoting the establishment on social media, sharing stories of how the diner had impacted their lives. Dr. Rivera created a post about how the diner's meal delivery service had helped his patients recover faster. Rose shared her story of finding strength and community within these walls. The veterans spoke about the sense of purpose they discovered in mentoring young volunteers. Each story painted a picture of something far more valuable than just a place to eat. The teenagers who had become part of the diner's extended family took the initiative to create a documentary project for their school. They interviewed regular customers, captured the daily operations of the delivery service, and highlighted the unique atmosphere that May and Ms. Chen had cultivated. Their project went viral locally, drawing attention to the diner's role as a community cornerstone. May watched these developments with quiet pride, continuing her duties with unwavering focus. One morning, she overheard 2 business consultants discussing the situation over coffee. They were amazed by the diner's resilience, noting how its community-centered approach had created a loyal customer base that no corporate chain could easily replicate. "You can't franchise genuine care," one consultant remarked, watching May discreetly help an elderly customer with his coat. The other nodded, adding, "or build community spirit with a marketing budget." They left a generous tip and a note complimenting the diner's authentic approach to business. The corporate restaurant opened with great fanfare, its modern interior and standardized menu drawing initial crowds of curious customers. However, many found themselves returning to the diner, missing the personal connections and warm atmosphere that had become its hallmark. One rainy afternoon, May noticed a familiar face among the customers, the regional manager from the corporate restaurant chain, sitting alone and observing the diner's operations. Instead of showing concern, May served him with the same respectful attention she showed every customer. The manager, introduced as Mr. Thompson, found himself drawn into conversation with the regulars around him. "I've opened dozens of restaurants," Mr. Thompson admitted to May as she refilled his coffee, "but I've never seen anything quite like this." He gestured to the diverse crowd of customers, students doing homework, veterans sharing stories, business people and laborers sitting side by side, all comfortable in the shared space. May's response was characteristically modest: "A meal tastes better when it's served with respect." The simple truth of her words struck a chord with Mr. Thompson, who had spent years focusing on efficiency metrics and profit margins. The corporate restaurant began to adjust its approach, trying to incorporate more community-oriented features. But they soon discovered that community spirit couldn't be manufactured or replicated through corporate policies. It grew naturally from genuine relationships and shared experiences, like those fostered every day at the diner. As spring progressed, the diner's influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. The delivery service had evolved into a comprehensive community support network. Regular customers began offering their professional services, legal advice, medical consultations, job training, creating an informal resource exchange that operated alongside the daily meal service. May's former Marine unit members, hearing about the diner's situation, organized a veterans breakfast club that met weekly. Their presence added another layer to the diner's rich community tapestry, and their stories helped bridge the gap between military and civilian life for many young people. Lynn, the nurse who had first attended May's self-defense class, started a mentoring program for nursing students at the diner. The quiet atmosphere and May's supportive presence created the perfect environment for sharing experiences and building confidence in their chosen profession. The corporate restaurant's management team found themselves regularly visiting the diner, trying to understand its secret to success. What they discovered was something that couldn't be replicated in a business plan: the authentic care and connection that May and Ms. Chen had cultivated over time. One evening, as May was closing up, Mr. Thompson returned to the diner. This time, he came with a different purpose. "We've been doing it all wrong," he admitted. "Would you and Ms. Chen consider consulting with us? Help us understand how to better serve our communities?" May shared a look with Ms. Chen, both women understanding the irony of the situation. The corporate chain that had once seemed a threat now sought their guidance. They agreed to share their insights, not out of competition but from a genuine desire to help other establishments better serve their communities. The diner's story began appearing in business journals and community development studies. Academics and entrepreneurs visited to observe their model of community-centered business. Through it all, May maintained her quiet presence, serving coffee and pie while gently guiding the diner's evolution. Ms. Chen often watched May during these times, marveling at how her quiet waitress had helped transform a simple family diner into a blueprint for community resilience. The military precision that had once made May an exceptional soldier now served a different mission: building connections and strengthening community bonds one cup of coffee at a time. Summer arrived with an unexpected opportunity for the diner. A local television producer, who had become a regular customer during the corporate restaurant situation, approached Ms. Chen about featuring the diner in a documentary series about successful community-centered businesses. The prospect of public attention made May uncomfortable, but she understood its potential impact on their growing initiatives. The filming began quietly, with a small crew capturing the diner's daily rhythms. They documented the early morning preparations, as May and Ms. Chen worked in comfortable silence, readying the space for another day of service. The cameras caught moments that regular customers had come to take for granted: May's subtle adjustments to help an elderly patron with mobility issues, her quiet words of encouragement to struggling teenagers, the respectful nods exchanged with fellow veterans. Pete, now essentially the diner's unofficial security consultant, shared his observations with the documentary team. "What you're seeing here isn't just good service," he explained, watching May coordinate the morning rush with military precision. "It's a masterclass in community building. Every move has purpose, every interaction matters." The crew was particularly moved by the story of a young man named David, who had started coming to the diner after losing his job. May had noticed his growing desperation and, without drawing attention to his situation, had arranged for him to help with deliveries in exchange for meals. Through the diner's network, David connected with a local contractor who offered him an apprenticeship. Now, months later, he was thriving in his new career but still came by regularly to volunteer. During filming, the three thugs who had initially harassed May made an unexpected return to the diner. Their entrance caused a ripple of tension through the regular customers, but their demeanor was markedly different. The leader, noticeably subdued, approached the counter where May stood with her usual calm presence. "We owe you an apology," he said, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "We've seen the changes you've made here, in the community. It's—" He struggled to find the words, "It's important work." May accepted their apology with characteristic grace, offering them coffee and a fresh start. The documentary crew captured this moment of transformation, understanding its significance in the diner's ongoing story. The filming also revealed the extent of May's influence on the younger staff. The teenage volunteers who had started helping during the winter emergency had developed into capable leaders themselves. They had internalized May's principles of situational awareness and community service, applying them in their own lives and inspiring their peers. One afternoon, a group of business students from the local university came to study the diner's unique operational model. They were surprised to find that the most valuable lessons weren't in the business metrics but in the intangible aspects of community connection. May's approach to service, blending military efficiency with genuine compassion, challenged their traditional understanding of business success. The documentary crew captured a particularly powerful moment when a former combat medic, struggling with PTSD, found his way to the diner. May recognized the signs immediately: the hypervigilance, the tension, the need for a safe space. Without words, she ensured he was seated in a quiet corner with a clear view of the exits. Throughout his visit, she maintained a protective buffer around him, allowing him to gradually acclimate to the civilian environment. The medic became a regular, slowly opening up to the diner's community. He eventually joined the delivery service, finding purpose in helping others. His medical training proved invaluable during wellness checks on elderly residents, adding another layer of care to their community outreach. Ms. Chen, watching all of this unfold through the documentary's lens, realized that her parents' simple diner had evolved into something they never could have imagined. It was now a model for how businesses could serve as anchors for community resilience and healing. The documentary was capturing not just their story, but a blueprint for positive change. The corporate restaurant chain, following through on their consultation request, began implementing lessons learned from the diner. Mr. Thompson regularly sought May's advice on creating more community-centered spaces within their franchise model. While they couldn't replicate the diner's organic growth, they could adopt principles of genuine service and community engagement. As summer progressed, the documentary crew witnessed the diner's role in an unexpected crisis. A severe storm caused widespread power outages in the neighborhood. May immediately activated their emergency response network, coordinating with local authorities and volunteers to provide hot meals and support to affected residents. The diner, equipped with a backup generator thanks to May's foresight, became a temporary relief center. The cameras captured the seamless coordination between veteran volunteers, teenage helpers, and community members. May's military training shone through in the efficient organization of resources and personnel, but it was her humanity that truly impressed the documentary team. Even in the midst of crisis management, she took time to comfort distressed children and ensure elderly residents were properly cared for. This event highlighted something the documentary hadn't initially set out to capture: the way May's military experience had been transformed into a force for community building. Her tactical skills now served to protect and nurture rather than engage in combat. The precision that had made her an excellent sniper now enabled her to target community needs with remarkable accuracy. The filming also revealed the ripple effects of May's influence. Other businesses in the area had begun adopting aspects of the diner's community-centered approach. The local grocery store started its own delivery service for homebound residents. The hardware store organized workshop sessions where veterans taught young people practical skills. The diner had become a catalyst for positive change throughout the neighborhood. As the documentary project neared completion, the producer realized they had captured something far more significant than a simple business success story. They had documented a model of community transformation, driven by the quiet leadership of a former Marine who had found a new way to serve. May's response to seeing the rough cut of the documentary was characteristic of her humble nature. "The story isn't about me," she insisted. "It's about what happens when people choose to look out for each other." The producer knew differently. May's unique combination of military discipline and compassionate service had created something extraordinary, even if she would never take credit for it. The release of the documentary brought unexpected attention to the diner. While May preferred to stay out of the spotlight, the film's message resonated with viewers across the country. Other communities began reaching out, seeking guidance on how to replicate the diner's success in building strong community connections. One morning, May arrived to find a group of veterans waiting outside the diner before opening. They had traveled from a struggling neighborhood in a nearby city, having seen the documentary. Their community was dealing with high unemployment, isolated elderly residents, and a lack of support for returning service members. They hoped to learn from May's example. May listened to their story while preparing the diner for opening, her movements efficient as always. These veterans saw what others might miss: the way she positioned herself to maintain awareness of the entire space, how she created safe zones within the dining area, her tactical approach to customer service. They recognized a kindred spirit who had successfully bridged the military-civilian divide. "We have the skills," one of the visiting veterans explained, "but we don't know how to apply them like this." May understood completely. She had once struggled with the same challenge, finding a way to use military training to nurture rather than defend. After discussing it with Ms. Chen, they invited the group to shadow the diner's operations for a week. The visiting veterans integrated smoothly into the daily routine, learning not just about food service but about community building. They witnessed how May's military background influenced every aspect of the operation, from the organized supply system to the strategic placement of tables and chairs. More importantly, they saw how she had adapted military precision to create a space of comfort and healing. During their stay, a situation arose that demonstrated the practical application of their skills. A young mother, clearly distressed, entered the diner with two small children. May's subtle hand signal, a remnant from her Marine days, alerted the visiting veterans to a potential situation. They watched as she calmly approached the family, her body language non-threatening but protective. The mother, it turned out, was fleeing an abusive situation. The veterans observed as May efficiently coordinated with their community network, Rosa's domestic violence support group, Dr. Rivera's medical resources, and Pete's law enforcement connections. Within hours, the family was safely connected with appropriate services, all while being sheltered within the diner's protective environment. This real-world example showed the visiting veterans how their military training could be repurposed for community support. The precision, situational awareness, and quick decision-making that had served them in combat could be powerful tools for civilian aid. They began taking notes, mapping out how similar networks could be established in their own community. The documentary's impact continued to spread. Local businesses from other neighborhoods sent representatives to study the diner's model. May found herself hosting informal workshops during slow periods, sharing insights about community-centered business practices. She always emphasized that the key wasn't in the specific programs but in the genuine commitment to serving others. Ms. Chen watched with pride as May mentored these visitors, knowing that each person who learned from their example would help strengthen another community. The diner had become more than a success story, it was a blueprint for positive change. The teenage volunteers who had become integral to the diner's operations took particular interest in the visiting veterans' presence. They asked questions about military service, not from a perspective of combat but of community service. The veterans shared stories of humanitarian missions, disaster relief efforts, and the importance of teamwork in crisis situations. One afternoon, a group of city planners visited the diner, interested in studying its impact on community resilience. They were particularly impressed by how the diner's influence had reduced local crime rates and improved emergency response times in the neighborhood. May's network of veterans and volunteers had created an informal neighborhood watch system that emphasized prevention and community support over confrontation. The visiting veterans took careful notes on these discussions, seeing how their military experience could contribute to similar improvements in their own community. They began to envision how their struggling neighborhood could be transformed through the application of these principles. As their week of observation drew to a close, the visiting veterans had developed a clear plan for their own community initiative. They would start small, just as May had, focusing first on building trust and genuine connections. Their military training would serve as a foundation for organizing community support systems and emergency response networks. May spent extra time with them during their final evening, sharing detailed insights about the challenges they might face. She emphasized the importance of patience, of allowing community trust to develop naturally, and of maintaining the discipline to stay focused on service rather than recognition. The mission now, she told them, drawing on their shared military background, is to build peace, one small act at a time. The veterans nodded in understanding, recognizing the familiar sense of purpose in her words. The documentary team, which had returned to film follow-up material, captured these interactions. They recognized that they were witnessing the beginning of something significant, the spread of May's approach to community building to other neighborhoods in need. As the visiting veterans prepared to leave, May presented each of them with a small notebook containing her observations and suggestions. The gesture was practical, military-like in its efficiency, but the recipients understood its deeper meaning. These were not just instructions but a passing of the torch, an invitation to carry forward the mission of community service. The impact of their visit rippled through the diner's regular customers. The elderly patrons expressed joy at the idea of similar support systems being established in other communities. The teenagers talked excitedly about connecting with youth in the visiting veterans' neighborhood. Dr. Rivera offered to provide guidance on setting up medical support networks. May's quiet influence had created something that was beginning to extend far beyond the walls of their small diner. Her example showed how military veterans could become powerful forces for community building, how their training and experience could be redirected toward creating spaces of healing and growth. The visiting veterans left with more than just a business model, they carried with them a new understanding of how their military skills could serve their community. May watched them leave with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the ripples of positive change would continue to spread. 1 year after the original confrontation that had inadvertently sparked so much change, the diner prepared for a special celebration. Ms. Chen had decided to commemorate not just the anniversary but the remarkable transformation their humble establishment had undergone. The documentary about the diner had inspired similar initiatives in dozens of communities across the country, and representatives from many of these new programs were coming to share their stories. May approached the preparation with her usual methodical efficiency, but even she couldn't help feeling moved by the scope of what had grown from that single moment of standing up to bullies. The 3 men who had once threatened her had become regular customers, their initial aggression transformed into respect and eventual community involvement. The ringleader now helped coordinate security for community events, using his imposing presence to protect rather than intimidate. The morning of the celebration began like any other, with May arriving before dawn to begin preparations. As she moved through her familiar routine, she reflected on how much had changed while the essential heart of their mission remained the same, serving others with dignity and respect. The first to arrive were the veterans from the struggling neighborhood who had visited months earlier. Their community initiative had flourished, adapting May's model to their local needs. They had transformed an abandoned warehouse into a community center, using their military training to organize programs for youth mentorship, elderly support, and veteran reintegration. Throughout the day, more guests arrived, each bringing stories of how the diner's example had influenced their own communities. Rose, now running a successful support network for domestic violence survivors, had helped establish similar programs in neighboring cities. The teenage volunteers who had started as delivery helpers had initiated youth leadership programs in their schools, teaching peers about community service and emergency preparedness. Dr. Rivera arrived with exciting news. The hospital had adopted a community care program inspired by the diner's delivery service, with medical students now training in community engagement alongside their clinical studies. Lynn, the nurse who had first attended May's self-defense class, had become a leading advocate for healthcare worker safety and community-based preventive care. The corporate restaurant chain, represented by Mr. Thompson, had undergone its own transformation. While they couldn't replicate the diner's intimate community connections, they had implemented programs to support local initiatives in each franchise location. The business model May and Ms. Chen had developed was being studied in management schools as an example of sustainable community-centered enterprise. Pete, now retired from his security consulting work, had become a mentor to young law enforcement officers, teaching them the importance of community engagement and preventive intervention. His experience watching May's approach to conflict resolution had influenced his training methods, emphasizing de-escalation and community building over confrontation. The documentary crew returned to capture the celebration, amazed by how much additional material had developed since their initial filming. They found themselves documenting not just a single community's transformation but a growing movement of positive change. During the celebration, May maintained her usual position behind the counter, serving coffee and pie with the same careful attention she always had. But those who knew her well could see the quiet pride in her bearing as she watched the interactions between people whose lives had been touched by the diner's influence. The highlight of the day came when a group of veterans from across the country, all of whom had started similar initiatives in their communities, presented May with a specially crafted Marine Corps shadow box. Inside was a collection of unit patches from each of their new community programs, surrounding May's own service medals. The gesture recognized how her military service had evolved into a different kind of mission, one that continued to inspire others. Ms. Chen took a moment to address the gathered crowd, her voice carrying the weight of years of wisdom. "A year ago, some people tried to bring darkness into our diner," she said, glancing at May. "Instead, they accidentally helped us discover how much light we could spread." The celebration continued into the evening, with the diner's extended family sharing meals and stories. The teenagers who had grown up under May's guidance demonstrated the leadership skills they had developed. The elderly patrons who had once been isolated now sat surrounded by friends and community supporters. The veterans who had found purpose in community service shared plans for future initiatives. As the event wound down, May found a quiet moment to step outside. The street that had once seemed ordinary now held so much meaning: the hardware store where veterans taught workshops, the grocery store that had joined their community support network, the corporate restaurant that had learned to prioritize community connection over profit. The three former antagonists approached her, their demeanor respectful. "We came to make trouble," the leader admitted, "but you showed us a better way to be strong." May's response was characteristic in its simplicity: strength is best used to lift others up. The documentary crew captured this moment of reflection, understanding that it represented something profound about community transformation. The quiet waitress who had once been underestimated had demonstrated how military precision and genuine compassion could combine to create powerful positive change. As the last guests departed, May and Ms. Chen began their closing routine, just as they had done countless times before. The diner would open as usual the next morning, continuing its mission of serving the community. But now they knew that their influence extended far beyond their walls, touching lives in ways they never could have imagined. The story of the quiet waitress who stood up to bullies had become something much larger, a testament to how one person's choice to serve others with dignity and respect could spark a movement of positive change. May's military training had found its highest purpose not in combat but in building peace, one cup of coffee, one act of kindness, one community at a time.